At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked number one in innovation for 10 consecutive years and number two among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
We're here because the news is being distorted. We're here because people are being inundated with misinformation on social media. We're here because people are being judged guilty until proven innocent. We are fighting back with facts. This is not a safe zone, so buckle up, Buttercup.
This is the raw, naked truth.
The U.S. bombs Iranian nuclear enrichment facilities. A setback for Trump's big, beautiful bill. The Supreme Court gives a win to oil companies and more. Welcome to the Raw Naked Truth. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin, and here's the news you need to know. The U.S. bombed 3 nuclear sites in Iran on Saturday in Operation Midnight Hammer, which President Trump hailed as a spectacular military success. Speaking from the White House, Trump said the strikes were aimed at ending Iran's nuclear threat and warned of far greater attacks if Iran does not make peace. U.S. military aircraft bombed Iran's Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan nuclear sites using at least 6 bunker busters on Fordo, buried nearly 300 feet beneath a mountain. Trump declared the facility was completely and totally obliterated. Saturday's bombing followed Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear sites and Iran firing hundreds of missiles across Israel. Officials confirmed that Trump approved attack plans Tuesday, but wanted to pursue negotiations first. The Trump administration explored a back-channel meeting with Iran in Istanbul, brokered by Turkey's president, as a last-ditch effort, but Tehran refused direct talks unless Israel halted its attacks. European and Iranian negotiators met in Geneva Friday in hopes of hashing out an agreement to de-escalate Iran's conflict with Israel over the nuclear program, but they failed to come to an agreement as Iran reportedly insisted it be allowed to continue enriching uranium. Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, in what appeared to be his first comments since the U.S. attack, didn't mention America, instead saying Israel had made a grave mistake. Vice President J.D. Vance suggested that Iran still controlled its enriched uranium stockpile that could be used to make around 10 nuclear weapons. The International Atomic Energy Agency said that Iranian authorities did not report any contamination or pollution as a result of the U.S. attacks. Sources told NBC News that Iran warned President Trump through intermediaries last week that if the U.S. attacked its nuclear facilities, it would activate sleeper cell terrorists within the U.S. Last night, New York City Mayor Eric Adams said the city was on heightened alert, particularly for potential lone wolf attacks and cyber attacks. Iran's parliament voted to close the Strait of Hormuz on Sunday, a key oil choke point handling 20% of global crude shipments escalating the crisis after U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. That morning, Iran fired about 30 missiles at Israel, wounding 21 people in Haifa, Tel Aviv, Be'er Yaakov, and Nes Ziona, with buildings reduced to rubble and some residents trapped. At a Pentagon press conference Sunday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, said the operation delivered extremely severe damage to Iran's nuclear facilities and emphasized the U.S. does not seek war. They outlined Operation Midnight Hammer, the mission using 7 B-2 bombers that flew 37 hours round trip from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. The stealth aircraft dropped 14 bunker buster bombs on Fordo and Natanz, encountering no resistance from Iran's air defenses. Americans traveling abroad are being urged to exercise caution worldwide as the war between Israel and Iran has resulted in travel disruptions globally. The U.S. State Department issued a warning to those traveling around the world, citing the potential for demonstrations against U.S. citizens. The conflict between Israel and Iran has resulted in disruptions to travel and periodic closure of airspace across the Middle East, the State Department said in its worldwide caution advisory. There is potential for demonstrations against U.S. citizens and interests abroad. The Department of State advises U.S. citizens worldwide to exercise increased caution. Last week, the State Department warned U.S. travelers to not travel to places like Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank because of armed conflict, terrorism, and civil unrest. The Islamic State, also known as ISIS, is believed to be behind a deadly suicide bombing that happened at a Greek Orthodox church in Syria on Sunday. At least 22 people were killed and 63 others were injured in the attack that took place at the Mar Elias Church in Dwellia, located at the outskirts of Damascus. It reportedly began while people were praying. The perpetrator first opened fire on the worshippers before detonating himself. While no group immediately claimed responsibility for the attack, Syrian Interior Ministry spokesman Nureddin al-Baba suggested ISIS as a likely culprit following a preliminary investigation. The security of places of worship is a red line, al-Baba said, further castigating ISIS and what remains of the former government of Ba'athist dictator Bashar al-Assad as actors trying to destabilize Syria. Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough has ruled that several key pieces of the massive bill to implement President Trump's agenda run afoul of the Byrd Rule and must be taken out of the package to allow it to pass with a simple majority vote on a special procedural fast track. These included a provision that would have eliminated the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, cutting $1.4 billion in costs by reducing the pay of Federal Reserve staff, cutting $293 million by reducing the Office of Financial Research funding, and cutting $771 million by eliminating the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board. The U.S. Supreme Court sided on Friday with fuel producers that had opposed California's standards for vehicle emissions and electric cars under a federal air pollution law, agreeing that their legal challenge to the mandates should not have been dismissed. The justices in a 7-2 ruling overturned a lower court's decision to throw out the lawsuit by a Valero Energy subsidiary and fuel industry groups. The lower court had concluded that the plaintiffs lacked the required legal standing to challenge a 2022 U.S. Environmental Protection Agency decision to let California set its own regulations. The government generally may not target a business or industry through stringent and allegedly unlawful regulation, and then evade the resulting lawsuits by claiming that the targets of its regulation should be locked out of court as unaffected bystanders, conservative Justice Brett Kavanaugh wrote for the majority. Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller said in a CNBC interview that he and his colleagues should consider slashing interest rates as early as July because he doesn't believe tariffs will significantly drive up inflation. These remarks came after he and other Fed governors voted to keep rates unchanged last week. President Trump has criticized Fed Chair Jerome Powell for refusing to lower them, but with Waller's comments, the call is now coming from inside the Fed. Waller noted that he wasn't speaking for the whole committee that decides, but said it was time to start thinking about a cut to avoid harming the labor market. That presents a stark contrast to the cautious tone Powell struck in a press conference earlier last week, reiterating the Fed's wait-and-see stance and expressing concerns that tariffs could still drive up prices. That's the Raw Naked Truth. You can catch every episode of the Raw Naked Truth Daily News Brief, as well as our sister podcast, Carnivore Radio, with news analysis and commentary, and the rest of the Xvadio Podcast Network at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech. We'll see you next time.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.